The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. The African is pushing back. We are fighting to reclaim our sovereignty. And what happened in Bamako is sending a signal to Africans that if truly we want to unite, it is very simple. Because if Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso can actually unite to give us what we are seeing in Africa, that is making us all to be excited, that should tell us that it is the other leaders in the democratic elected who are not ready for the African unification. If not, it is very easy. And this also shows us that the African can actually unite, like the way we have the perception that we can come together. Our all in all, our savior, protector, the unifier, the messiah, the king of kings, the most loved. General Assimi Goita granted an interview and he touched on a lot of things according to our all in all. The security in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, as we know, has been together. And now we have a unified force. And we are also seeing that they are doing everything possible to fight against whatever that is bothering them. And they are also doing their best to give us so much, because we should expect a lot from them. That we should be expecting a lot of transformation, because they are working day in, day out to make us happy. And he also went further to touch on these are democratic elected who do not want to see the progress of Africa, how they were planning to invade Niger. And when they realized that the two other nations joined Niger, they just couldn't believe it. You will not believe that, according to him, they called him to even ask. And when he even told them, they were pleading that they should allow them to invade Niger, because what happened in Niger is different from what happened in Mali and in Burkina Faso.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the Kuluba Presidential Palace, where we are being hosted by the President of the Transition, President of the Confederation of Sahel States, for an exclusive interview as part of the second session of the College of Heads of State of the Confederation of Sahel States. Mali has guided the first steps of the Confederation of Sahel States. What is the assessment? What has been achieved? And what are the prospects? The President of the Transition, President of the Confederation of Sahel States, will answer us in a moment. Good evening, Mr. President.
Good evening, Sira.
To conduct this interview, I am joined by Fuseni Tunkara from the Presidency's Communications Unit here in Kuluba. Good evening, Fuseni.
Good evening, Sira. Good evening, Your Excellency.
Good evening.
Well, welcome to our set. Mr. President, 1 year of presidency of the AES, it has been a journey with several milestones. Tell us, what were the first actions taken during your presidency? What is your perspective?
Thank you, Sira. First and foremost, I would like to pay a well-deserved tribute to the sovereign peoples of the Confederation, that is, the populations of Burkina Faso, of Mali and Niger, who very quickly understood the stakes of our struggle, which is structured around the vision of respect for our sovereignty and the interests of our peoples. So I would really like to thank them, and above all, ask them to remain mobilized and committed, because the fight is not over.
Your Excellency, what was your objective in accepting to lead the AES for this first year?
So before answering that question, I would first like to revisit the motivations behind the creation of the Confederation. It was when certain African countries decided to attack our brotherly nation of Niger. And it was at that moment that we decided to offer our fraternal and, above all, military support to truly defend the integrity and sovereignty of our brotherly nation, Niger. And we must acknowledge that this threat of aggression was very real, because one of the presidents of those African countries that had decided to attack Niger called me to dissuade us from interfering in the situation. At that time, he asked me if we were serious. I replied, "If you think we are not serious, just try to attack Niger and you will see what happens next." So after an hour of discussion, the president in question was truly convinced, and he said that he was the only bulwark for any potential negotiation to take place. But he said that the decision to attack Niger had already been approved. So this is to show you just how real this threat was. Then he tried to explain to me that the situation in Niger was different from the situation in Mali and Burkina. In his own words, if we let President Bazoum go at the time, whose turn would it be next? Well, I simply replied, if we also let you attack Niger, whose turn would it be next? So it was fair game. So in the end, I think he came to his senses when he saw that we were truly determined to defend Niger. So this is to tell you that this threat was real, and to truly formalize our union, to give it a legal character and legitimacy to our union to defend Niger. We decided and unanimously and simultaneously signed the Liptako-Gurma Charter to establish the Alliance of Sahel States. And in this Liptako-Gurma Charter, its Article 6 stipulates the establishment of a collective defense and mutual assistance between the member states. Also in its Article 4, it aims to combat armed terrorist groups in all their forms and cross-border crime, and especially banditry. So in its Article 6, which is the most important and which states that an attack on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of a member state of the alliance will be considered an act of aggression and will require collective and mutual assistance from the other members of the alliance. So I think that today this is a reality. And I think that is what guarantees this confederation.
So, as you said, it started from a National Defense Pact. But today the AES is the 3 Ds, right? Diplomacy, defense, and development. Today you have built on that foundation. We will start with the defense component, which is by no means the least important within the Confederation. Tell us, what are the notable advances that we can see today regarding this issue of defense? What has been done in terms of harmonizing and coordinating military actions?
So when you look closely at the Liptako-Gurma Charter, it contained only one pillar, the defense and security pillar. So aware of the fact that today we cannot separate defense from development issues, and as they say, without fuel, the tank will never move. So also aware of the fact that without sustained diplomacy, these 2 pillars cannot prosper. And that is why, during the Niamey Declaration, we decided to instead establish the creation of the Confederation. So to expand the defense pillar to the other 2 pillars, namely defense, security, and development, and diplomacy. So to come back to your question concerning defense and security issues, we must acknowledge that since the establishment of the Confederation on July 6, 2024 in Niamey, and immediately the various defense ministers and chiefs of general staff have set to work. First, as a first step, liaison officers were put in place in the different countries in order to coordinate the various operations. Then there is a ramp-up phase to lead to the unified force, because when you look at the roadmap of the AES of the Confederation, Mali was requested to work on establishing the unified force. So then following that, there was a comprehensive training phase, and during this period there were a series of tactical exercises which took place in the city of Niamey. In addition to the Sahel states, both Togo and Chad also participated in these activities. So that was essentially the beginning of the ramp-up process, marking the start of increased engagement and collaboration. So there was also the training of staff officers by the Alioune Blondin Bey Peacekeeping School of Mali. So all these actions have made it possible to ramp up the unified force. So as you have noticed, we have handed over the standard of the unified force. Well, pragmatically and visibly, there have in fact been major advances in terms of security, although it's true that challenges still persist. Even taking into account or looking at the very principles of war, the first principle is freedom of action. Today, our countries have this freedom of action, of movement. Today, we are free to go where we want, to do what we want. So that was not at all possible in past years. So if you also look since 2023, there have been several joint operations against these armed terrorist groups, the most recent of which are Ireko 1 and Ireko 2. So these operations have indeed allowed us to neutralize several terrorist groups and especially leaders, something that was not possible through certain foreign countries or certain powerful nations who had even put a price on the heads of these terrorist leaders. So today, we must recognize that the AES has now managed to change this dynamic, not only by neutralizing hundreds of terrorists, but also by destroying several terrorist sanctuaries. So today, this has allowed us to pacify the area somewhat. So when you also look in terms of strategic autonomy, our countries have suffered a great deal. Because we didn't have the freedom, the ability to easily purchase equipment because it was subcontracted by countries that use this sector as a tool to be able to influence us. But we must really acknowledge today that with sincere partners, we are now able to equip ourselves and carry out our operations day and night and always maintain the initiative. Meaning we can attack the enemy before they initiate hostilities. So all of these factors were not possible at all, but thank God, and today it's true, the challenges persist, because if you look today, we are no longer in the traditional phase of combat against armed terrorist groups. Now it's the geopolitical phase. Because when you look at the environment and the fact that the modus operandi of these armed terrorist groups change throughout the day, it means there's an entire arsenal behind them that develops the strategy that provides and directs the targets based on geopolitical interests. Certain disgruntled partners who have now been driven from our territories. And knowing full well that it's a matter of survival, yes, because not only have they lost their position in terms of geopolitics, in terms of influence, they have also lost in terms of resources, so they will never leave us in peace. And inevitably they will try to create problems for us. But overall, I think that today the AES Confederation has scored many points in terms of defense and security. Not only do we have freedom of action, we also have the initiative. And today the unified force is already operational and it will take over. It will take over, meaning since 2023, these operations were already underway, but we needed to establish a more simpler, more adapted organization so that the various defense ministers and chiefs of general staff could rest a little. So this unified force is the new dynamic to continue the fight against armed terrorist groups. Hearing you, Mr. President, we are reassured that the AES strategy will adapt to the realities on the ground. Exactly, it's military in reality. The enemy, it's a game of hide and seek. The enemy will inevitably also read into everything we are planning. So they will change their modus operandi depending on the stakes or the objectives to be achieved. So we too will be able to develop methods of operation to counter them. But that's fair game. What is certain is that we must prepare to really develop more strategies and above all to anticipate. The problem is anticipation. There, if we manage to anticipate, we will be able to neutralize them in time, and then fear will change sides. But if, however, it is these armed groups that take the initiative, not only will it disrupt our operations, but it will also create more fear among our populations. So I am certain that our populations were not used to experiencing certain tensions that people never thought would lead to attacks on tankers today. People never imagined that this could happen because the targets that were chosen were military objectives. But today, given the fact that they are losing momentum and that these terrorists are indeed being harassed, the situation has changed. The situation has changed. So inevitably, they will want to exploit the weakest link, which is the population and the strategic resources. So I think there is room for hope.
Your Excellency, you spoke earlier about partnership, and today it's really self-evident, isn't it? The Confederation of Sahel States has strengthened its military cooperation. Tell us a little about this cooperation.
So regarding the military cooperation of the states of the alliance of Sahel states with certain sincere partners like the Russian Federation, Turkey and China, it is a reality. These are pragmatic cooperations. They are cooperations of sincerity and above all of effectiveness. And in a partnership, the most important thing is mutual respect. The way each side views the other, the way each side is treated, and the way each one tries to preserve its interests. So I think that The most important thing today with these three states, there are other partners, but the most strategic ones are these three states that I have just mentioned. Truly, these countries, it must be acknowledged, they have helped us in difficult times, The times when certain countries abandoned us and were also always engaged in this dynamic of destabilizing us. When we asked for the support of these countries, indeed, they helped us. They helped us. When you look today at some of the material we have, military equipment, as I said, you can have the money, but it was not at all a given. It's not at all a given. And today, thank God, we have managed to procure this material. Also, when you often look at the acquisition of material, it takes years. It's years of planning, often 2 or 3 years. But in an emergency, as soon as we spoke to these presidents, they very quickly gave instructions to their governments so that we could really gain access. The material that is on its way to Mali right now, it wasn't a given. But when I spoke to President Xi Jinping and showed him the necessity and that we are at war, and in front of everyone, he also gave priority to Mali. And his instructions, he ensures them in a way meticulous about this decision to make it happen. And thank God, today it's a reality. People see the equipment arriving. So this is to tell you that it's sincerity. It's a pragmatic partnership. So with these different partnerships, we have managed to change the game in the Sahel in terms of the fight against armed terrorist groups and in terms of reorganizing our armies.
Well, that allows us to introduce the question of diplomacy, which is by no means the least important, Mr. President. States assert themselves through diplomacy today. We have noticed that the AES speaks with one voice. This is very important for the Sahel states to be able to make their voices heard on the international stage. Tell us, what is the harmonization at this level? How do you manage to harmonize your points of view and speak with one voice?
Yes, indeed, you are right. When the birth of the Confederation, well, some people didn't take us seriously, but also with this dynamic of trying to divide us, to distract us. So we had to understand this strategy and also be able to counter it. So fortunately, we understood quickly and we prepared ourselves, because the dynamic that was in place was to ensure that the AES would not be able to exist. So you'll see, even in terms of invitations to participate in certain conferences, certain meetings, they would invite the states individually. So we tried to put an end to that. If the 3 states are invited by an organization or a country, we have requested that it be under the banner of the Confederation. So that was the first step.
According to him, these things are things that are clearly showing us that Africans, we are not ready to unite, and we are always doing our best to support oppression. Because if Africans, we are totally looking for our freedom, we don't see the reason to which we, the same Africans, will be rising against our brothers in order to police other people. How on earth is the African in this 21st century who is crying for freedom, who always sits in their meetings to talk about how we are being disrespected all the time as Africans, will still be ready to go and invade their brother just simply because the oppressor says so? This is a clear indication that the reason to which we are not moving forward is as a result of our own selves, and that these attacks that they are receiving is from these people. Like recently what happened in Benin Republic, where Emmanuel Macron came out to tell the whole world that they provided intelligence to Nigeria to thwart the coup in Benin Republic. It is the African who isn't ready to fight for his or her freedom. Like General Abdurrahman Chani said, we were made to love slavery. So for that matter, anything at all that is oppression is what we fight for, instead of fighting for our freedom. And these are the same people who sit in African Union, ECOWAS meetings, and in other meetings to be talking about how the African needs to unite. How do we unite if we continue to be having this kind of people who will rise up to fight against our progress? And we have seen a lot of development within the shortest possible time that we had this AES alliance. And like he said, we'll be seeing more, and they'll continue to fight to make sure they protect their citizens and to reclaim their power, because according to him, even when they were trying to get themselves equipment to protect themselves, these people kept a ban. But finally, they had trusted people who were willing to support them in their liberation fight. So they can get the equipment like what we have been seeing day in, day out. It wasn't easy before finally they had trusted people in other places who are ready to help them. And as Africans, this is the time for us all to come together to support AES. We need to fight for our own sovereignty, because no other person will give us the sovereignty we are looking for. If we continue to allow other people to treat us like slaves, then that is our own choice. But we have every right to fight for our freedom. If Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are showing us the way to freedom, this is the time for us all to help, support, and protect the alliance, because if this thing should stand, it's going to spread to other places. Like Captain Ibrahim Traore said, the black winter is coming, and it will be bloody, it will be cold, it will be deadly, and that it will start from West Africa. And it is going to be something that is war. And that at the end of the day, we will be free, and we will celebrate everything that makes the African proud. Because according to him, we will chase away the wolf and use the skin, because the cold will be too intense. We'll use the skin to now cover ourselves, because that will be the coat of the African. And we need to unite as a people to support our leaders that are doing everything possible to protect and save the African. And not to be thinking about our respective countries claiming, even when the leaders are not doing anything good and they are fighting the progress of Africa, we will not sit there and say we are supposed to be patriotic. So for that matter, we need to continue to support these leaders blindly. The only leaders that we have right now in Africa are the ones that we have in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, because they are the only ones that are doing everything possible to fight for the African liberation. So if you wouldn't be in that team, where else do you want to be? Are you ready to continue to be a slave? Are you ready to continue to leave slavery as an inheritance for your children? We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world in Africa, West Africa, and in Mali.